Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Rachel Bryan. I'm a partner at Deloitte in our technology and transformation business, and I'm super excited about all of the transformation effort that we're seeing across the London market. And today, we're going to be talking about harnessing the power of APIs, both all of the efficiencies that we can find, the innovation we can find, and ultimately getting to a more connected London market. Now, I'm joined by two fabulous guests today. Dave, would you like to start with some intros?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Rachel. So I am from Munich Re. I'm a senior product manager in our tech organization, and I run our global API management platform. So we provide API management capability and developer capability across the entire Munich Re group, which covers MEAG and American Modern and the syndicate and all that kind of stuff. So I deal with APIs and development teams and product teams and business teams all day, every day to do with APIs.
Super, thanks, Dave. Tom, over to you.
Tom McFarland, I'm from Novidea, and as Lewis has kindly mentioned, Novidea produce end-to-end policy administration management systems primarily targeted at brokers and MGAs. I'm a product manager, so it's my role to essentially define and plan our roadmap to make sure we deliver on the needs of our customers. And in particular, my focus is on kind of specialty market and Lloyd's and London market brokers. So this is a very interesting topic that we're talking about today.
Fabulous. Thank you, Tom. Thanks, Dave. So the market is abuzz with discussion about APIs. Beyond all of that hype, can both of you give me some practical examples of the use cases and the business benefits that we can find? Maybe, Tom, can I start with you from a broker perspective first?
Sure. I guess, again, the gents that were up on stage here just before me kind of alluded to the fact that commonly in a broking organization, the policy administration system can be the center or the hub of kind of, whether it be operational processes, data, even the center of integrations with other platforms. And kind of, in my experience, designing, developing, and implementing, and actually operating in prior roles, those policy administration systems, that kind of interoperability is kind of really key. Perfect examples being, customer onboarding. All organizations do client checks, know your client, or sanction screening, all that kind of thing. And bizarrely, many of the organizations in our industry kind of anticipate either a rekeying or an overnight batch job to run data into those systems or platforms that do those KYC and sanction screenings. And to me, in all honesty, that's crazy. Why wait overnight for a batch job or even a couple of days when you can implement an API and have that real time? And we've got numerous examples where we enter, as Novidea, we enter into an implementation project where our stakeholders expect that kind of day delay or that kind of thing and that kind of processing, and we kind of just come with the question, why? Why not have it real time? Enter your client data now, find the results now, and kind of improve processing that way. That's kind of, I guess, on the internal side of things and internal ecosystem. But additionally, it kind of extends out how you then work with carrier partners or external organizations. We've got a number of brilliant examples of kind of submissions coming from brokers and primarily into the MGA space, where it's perhaps a bit more kind of low value, high volume kind of business, where, again, there's loads of manual rekeying. So I've got a brilliant example of, we worked with an MGA who had a kind of key broking partner who, within the broker, they were entering data into their policy administration system, generating a document, attaching that document to an email, emailing the document then to the MGA. Somebody at the MGA receives the email, copy-pastes the data from the document, puts it into their system, that runs the rating, copy-paste the result of that back into the document, version 2, and sending it back to the broker. Again, why?
And I think I've heard that across multiple clients.
Exactly right.
That's not a single use case. Right?
Exactly, and it's kind of rinse and repeat across kind of the industry. So for us, relatively simple task of picking up the broking systems API, picking up our API, doing a real-time integration so that there's none of that rekeying and getting real-time responses. But crucially on that one, the guys at the MGA loved it because there's less rekeying. The guys at the broker loved it because they're getting quicker, faster responses. And collectively, the business and the clients benefit because things are happening faster and there was more MGA capacity to look at kind of referrals and kind of special acceptances. So that's kind of two really key examples that we see relatively commonly in terms of internal and then external kind of integrations through those APIs.
Fabulous. Thank you, Tom. Some great examples there, particularly that sort of market connectivity and connective tissue that we can find through APIs. Dave, could you maybe talk about some of the business benefits that you're seeing carrier side?
Yeah, absolutely. So echo exactly the same stuff as Tom. So it's all around efficiencies and integrating a bunch of data services together along the entire risk life cycle. So we like to use the term risk augmentation a lot, where we want to bring as much data from as many different data partners together on that risk journey. So when the risk is coming in, we want to be kind of removing as much unstructured data as possible and bringing that data into a more structured format so it can be automated. There's really no way to automate something that's just a bit of text in an email or stuck inside a Word document somewhere. So most of the teams at Munich Re that are building new applications, building different things across things like workbenches and underwriting workbenches and claims workbenches, everybody is building APIs. Every team is building either a set of internal APIs that are then used by other teams or building third-party facing, external-facing APIs. We see on the platform probably for every 10 or 20 internal APIs, there's one external-facing API. So there's a huge kind of propagation of those internal APIs, but we see them absolutely everywhere. They crop up in every business process, in every team, from the reinsurance side to the Munich Re specialty and the syndicate. Everybody is working on or consuming APIs.
Fab. Thanks, Dave. So one thing that is really, really, really critical is that APIs are well designed, and the quality of an API is critical. Otherwise, sort of rubbish in, rubbish out, right? Tom, can you maybe talk to some of the critical factors that are required to get an API right?
As a technologist, it's relatively common that people come up with a good idea and go, oh, we'll build an API for that, somebody will use it, it will be useful. The challenge with that is then it's not really driven by a business case or the real reason for doing it. So in terms of that kind of design principle, perhaps it's somewhat abstract, but it's all about what is the end use case? What is the reason for developing this thing? And then what are the benefits that are going to be realized by developing that API? So in terms of the design, that should always be the kind of reasoning at the kind of heart or the kind of center. And then I guess somewhat abstract again is that kind of the documentation that's aligned with that API that's being developed in terms of it's all very well, again, if you've got those business case or the benefits in mind when designing and developing, but then there's nothing to support how you can then use it or integrate with it, then it's not, again, really giving anybody much use because we need to understand how we can interact with that API. So it's all about the business case and then, for me at least, the business case and the benefits and then the documentation that supports it to make sure people can really use it.
Fabulous, thank you. Now, CISOs always get a little bit excited when we start talking about APIs. Dave, could you maybe talk to some of the security aspects that we need to think about?
Yeah, APIs are delicious honeypots for hackers, normally. When you're looking to hack or kind of enter into a system, you need to find an entry point, you want to find some documentation, you need to find some exploits, gain access to the system, and then cause havoc, do whatever you need to do. With any kind of external-facing API program, you give the hacker normally two of those things. So you give them the entry point, you give them the endpoints, you give them the entry to your infrastructure or systems, and you give them a ton of documentation. So if it's a good API, you're documenting all of the fields, all of the inputs, all of the outputs. You're giving them, the minimums and maximums, so you can pretty quickly test the insides and outs of those APIs. So it can be a fun kind of minefield to navigate API security. However, the concept of modern REST APIs, which the majority of APIs are nowadays, is about 24 years old now, I think. So there's a huge amount of software available, there's a huge amount of tooling, of documentation, in order to build secure, solid APIs. And it can be quite hard now, actually, with all the modern frameworks available to build APIs that have a bunch of security holes in them. So yeah, it's a fun part of a CISO's life, dealing with an API program.
Thanks, Dave. So we've talked about the advantages of APIs. There are clearly going to be some challenges in terms of implementing them across the market. Tom, could you maybe talk to some of the challenges and hurdles that we're going to need to overcome and some of the practical kind of solutions that you're looking at?
Sure. Again, kind of coming at it with the focus of policy administration being the kind of the center or the hub, where we then integrate with other platforms is, unfortunately, as a market, we're kind of a bit behind other industries, and our technology in lots of cases is quite old and perhaps not kind of ready and API enabled. So one of the key challenges is those kind of legacy technologies that aren't kind of ready and up to speed and kind of with the new kind of integration and ecosystem structure that we're all striving towards. So one of the challenges that we have to overcome is then, how do we either replace that platform or that system with something more modern, or how do we kind of potentially even use other technologies? I realize that APIs are the focus, but there is that option out there. What that drives then is whether or not the organizations that are looking for that transformational change, has the capability. So again, there's large organizations out there with, like Munich Re, who have teams dedicated to working with these APIs and kind of the digital transformation side of things. But there's also plenty of kind of smaller organizations out there that just don't have that skill set. They don't have that knowledge and those expertise. So that's, I guess, where firms like Deloitte and whoever else, a little plug for you there, come in to kind of help with that transformation and help with that digital change.
Yeah, great, thank you. And Dave, is there anything from a data standardization perspective we need to think about?
Yeah, I mean, data standards we mentioned, I think, in the previous couple of talks, right? So there's key attributes of a decent API come down to an API that's, and across an API program, if you're looking at a portfolio of APIs for a particular company you're wanting to integrate with, you want all of the APIs to feel as though they're written by just one team, albeit in reality they're likely written by 30, 50 different product teams, tech teams around the business. You ideally want all of those APIs to feel as though they've been authored by a single technical writer. And that's a huge challenge, being able to standardize and bring all of the documentation together so that you've got a set of APIs that you can easily integrate with is incredibly difficult to get to that position, especially when you're thinking of having an external-facing API program. So you've got your external developer portals and external security and all that kind of stuff. You need really rich, sensible documentation in order to have APIs that someone can consume. And people tend to forget their different levels of documentation when it comes to having a really solid external-facing API program. So you need to cater for the business users. You need to cater for the commercially minded individuals that will be looking at investing and spending time with your APIs. But then also catering for the technical audience, the developer that's going to be going down to the field level and integrating directly with that API. And if there aren't any particular data standards, so you can do all of that without any data standards, actually. You can just kind of make up your own and go for it. But then what actually happens is the integration effort for every single party, and we talked earlier about collaboration, and the market's full of this kind of collaborative process with many, many parties involved in a single risk. Every single player has to do that thinking and that work every single time. And that's really, really expensive. So with data standards allow you to free up a bunch of that time and agree on a data standard, yes, but then everybody implements it in the same way. Now, it won't mean that you can copy-paste code and it's all going to work beautifully, but it will significantly speed up that time of implementation and integration.
Super. Thank you, Dave. It's between us and drinks, so one final rapid-fire question, if that's okay. API is not a one-time fix. Both of you, what are the kind of 2-3 things we need to think about in terms of keeping them alive and rich? Dave, to you first.
Focus on security, focus on documentation, and focus on automation and self-service. Key kind of KPI, if you're looking at an API program, is time to first call. So how long does it take for someone to discover, sign up, register, and make their first successful API call?
Super, thank you. Tom?
Sound advice there, I think. I guess from my perspective, to add on top of that really is, I guess, governance, in that if we're integrating between either two internal or external platforms, a change made in one may impact the other. So we don't want things to fall apart. So let's have some proper governance around what changes impact where. And then also when, unfortunately, sometimes things do go wrong and, servers go down and etc. Unfortunately, it happens. Make sure we just have a solid kind of support model. What's the chain of investigation? How do we find the root cause and whose responsibility is it? So governance and support, really.
Super, some really, really, really practical examples there. Thank you ever so much, Dave and Tom, for such an insightful panel.